It's true. American muscle cars aren't as pretty as Lamborghinis, but who says they have to be downright ugly? Because while there are some that are worth admiring for their looks, there are others that just didn't look good at all. That being said, these are 8 of the ugliest American muscle cars ever made. Number 8. The 1979 AMC Spirit AMX. First on the list is the AMC Spirit AMX, a muscle car that never quite figured out its identity. Picture a car that looks like it was designed by someone who lost a bet, and you've got the Spirit AMX. It was a car that's trying to be a sports car, but ended up looking more like an awkward teenager at prom, caught between do I want to be cool or do I just want to fit in. This peculiar creation sported a hatchback design that seemed more at home in a grocery store parking lot than on the racetrack. And while it packed a 5.0-liter V8, delivering decent horsepower, it was hard to focus on that when the car looked like it was having an existential crisis. The design had sharp edges and an oddly rounded rear that just didn't mesh well. It's like the designer threw in every idea they had and hoped it would work. Spoiler alert, it didn't. In the end, the AMC Spirit AMX serves as a reminder that sometimes trying to be too different can backfire spectacularly. Might have had the spirit, but let's just say it didn't have the looks to match. Number 7. The 1975 Plymouth Roadrunner. Now, let's talk about the 1975 Plymouth Roadrunner, a car that came crashing down from its glory days like a cartoon character slipping on a banana peel. The earlier versions were fierce, embodying the spirit of the 60s and 70s muscle car movement, but by 1975, things took a turn. This model had a front end that looked like it had too many late-night snacks, bulbous and kinda awkward. The body was boxy and it looked like it was trying to be aerodynamic but failed miserably, much like someone attempting to run in flip-flops. The once iconic graphics were replaced with a design that could only be described as confused. Even the engine had taken a hit, tightened emission regulations, strangled the 5.9-liter V8 down to a paltry 165 horsepower. So not only did it look like it was taking a leisurely stroll, but it also didn't have the power to back it up at all. This version of the Roadrunner is a prime example of how the muscle car era was slipping away, losing its edge and its looks. Sure, it had some history, but by this point it felt like a shadow of its former self, trying to capture the magic of the past, but ending up looking like that friend who kind of peaked in high school. Number 6. 1981 Pontiac Firebird. Next up is the 81 Firebird, a car that wanted to be sleek and modern but ended up looking like a futuristic toaster. This iteration tried to embrace aerodynamic styling, but it was like the designer couldn't decide whether they were creating a muscle car or a spaceship. The sloped front end felt like a big departure from the aggressive, powerful look that muscle cars were known for. The bubble-top roofline only added to its strangeness, making it seem like Pontiac was trying to reinvent the wheel but missed by a mile. Even with a V8 engine under the hood, the performance was dulled due to emissions regulations, leaving enthusiasts yearning for the old-school Firebirds that left a mark on the streets. The 80s were a rough time for muscle cars, and the Firebird's radical redesign was a perfect reflection of that. Fans of classic muscle cars often look back at the Firebird with a sense of nostalgia for what it used to be. It's like seeing a beloved childhood star years later. Some things are just better left in the past. The 1981 Firebird might have had the name, but it definitely lost the magic. Number 5. 1978 Dodge Magnum. But how can we talk about ugly American muscle cars without mentioning the 1978 Dodge Magnum? I mean, this car tried to straddle the line between luxury and muscle, but ended up looking like a confused dad at a dance party. This car sported an elongated front end that was so forgettable, could have been a background character in a bad movie. The rear was bulky and overall it didn't know whether it was coming or going. Dodge seemed to market it as a luxury vehicle with muscle car roots, and while it had a plush interior, that didn't help its street cred. It's like wearing a tuxedo while showing up to a barbecue. Great intentions, terrible execution. You could throw in a powerful 6.6-liter V8 engine, but let's be real, the looks made it hard to believe it was anything more than a family car trying to disguise itself as a muscle car. The Magnum's identity crisis left many wondering who it was really made for. Was it for those who wanted a muscle car or for those who wanted something a bit fancier? In the end, it ended up pleasing neither. Number 4. The 1977 Dodge Monaco. Next up, the 1977 Dodge Monaco, a car that truly asks why. With its hefty dimensions and boxy design, it looked more like a piece of office furniture than a muscle car. Imagine cruising down the street in this behemoth. It's like driving a filing cabinet with wheels. This car was famously used as the Bluesmobile in the Blues Brothers, which might be the only reason it isn't totally forgotten. But let's face it, even the most die-hard fans of the movie probably wish it had stayed a little less memorable. The Dodge Monaco's design was all about the big and bold, but not in a good way. And more chrome than a dentist's office and a nose that could have taken a few parking lot hits without even flinching. The 440 cubic inch V8 engine was powerful, but no amount of horsepower could save it from looking like it was designed to sit in a parking lot rather than tear up the pavement. Number 3. 1970 AMC Javelin. Next up is the 70 AMC Javelin, a car that tried really hard to be cool but ended up looking like a confused teenager at a school dance. With its awkward proportions and questionable rear end, the Javelin is the automotive equivalent of a dad trying to rap. It wanted to fit in with the cool kids but ended up looking like it got lost on the way to the party, and you know exactly which dad I'm talking about. The front end had some aggressive styling that was supposed to scream performance, but it just whispered what happened. The Javelin was supposed to compete with muscle legends like the Mustang and Camaro, but instead it just competed for the title of most likely to be forgotten. In retrospect, it might have been better if AMC had just focused on making a sandwich instead of a car. Number 2. 1974 Ford Mustang II. The 74 Ford Mustang II is the muscle car that made enthusiasts collectively groan. Imagine a Mustang stripped of all its glory and presented as an awkward cousin who never quite got it together. This car was a response to the oil crisis, which meant it traded in muscle for economy, looking more like a bloated economy car than a proud muscle beast. With its rounded edges and a rear end that looked like it had been squished, the Mustang II didn't just disappoint fans, it utterly crushed dreams. You had a choice of underwhelming engines that barely lived up to the Mustang name. It was as if someone said, let's make a car that looks like a Mustang but feels like a Honda Civic, and then proceeded to take a nap while designing it.
All looks nice under here.
Number 1. 1975 Chevrolet Vega. Finally, we have the 75 Chevy Vega, the champion of ugly American muscle cars. If you ever wanted to know what happens when a muscle car gets too distracted by its own self-image, look no further. The Vega had a body style that looked like it was confused about whether it wanted to be a sporty coupe or a grocery getter. Let's not sugarcoat it, the Vega was a flop. Its design was so bad that it seemed like the people in charge were playing a game of how can we make this as unattractive as possible. The Vega was compact, but not in a cool way, more like small enough to fit in the back of a truck. It was a muscle car that missed the mark completely, proving that sometimes you just can't have it all. It wanted to be light and quick, but instead it ended up being light on style and heavy on awkwardness. So there you have it, the ugliest American muscle cars that have graced our roads. Each one of these cars has its unique take on what happens when design meets questionable judgment. Sure, they might not win any beauty contest, but they certainly have their place in automotive history. Sometimes the ugliest cars remind us that while muscle cars can be powerful, they can also be downright silly. Now head to the comments and tell us which of these muscle cars you think is the ugliest. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for all the muscle car content you'll ever need. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.